Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Stargirl, and this is going to be my review for episode 10 for this season, into the double digits, and this episode is otherwise entitled Brainwave Jr. But of course, spoiler alert, go away if you've not watched the episode, because we're going to be jumping into everything, and there's some stuff to talk about, so yeah. If you have not watched it, go away. But yeah, if you have watched the episode and you are continuing on with the video, it would be awesome if you could let me know your various opinions in the comment section down below. What were your various opinions about this episode? What was your favorite part? What made you go, wow, and stuff like that. Let me know all your various opinions down there. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, you enjoyed this episode of Stargirl, and you just want to show your support for the channel, why not drop a like on it? It helps the channel out more than you would think. But last episode was obviously the episode simply called Brainwave, where we saw Henry develop his powers in a more controlled manner by going through his father's tapes, which were left behind. We even got to sort of see the progression of his father from him sort of learning his own abilities, and just sort of it went parallel with Henry, because obviously Henry Jr. was following the tapes. But obviously we had a few cliffhangers, if you want to call it, towards the end. Obviously we had Henry Jr. killing the lawyer that was trying to get the money off his dad. We had Courtney and Pat figuring out that Jordan McKent is actually Icicle. And of course, we also had Barbara finding Pat and Courtney in the basement with the cosmic staff. Oh, drama alert. But yeah, jumping into this episode, like, man, just wow. We need to talk about it. I think this was my favorite episode of the series so far, of the season. I couldn't believe how this episode transpired. It started off not slow, but it was a lot of dialogue scenes and just a lot of build up, and then it just kept building up until the end, and yeah. But we start this episode off with another flashback. We're going 2 years in the past in Blue Valley, and I was wondering, okay, I thought we might have been doing something with Henry and maybe his dad, maybe him seeing his dad do something, or his dad killing someone, something along those lines. But we're actually flashbacking to Pat and Barbara meeting each other for the first time in Blue Valley. Obviously, we knew beforehand that Pat had been to Blue Valley to sort of track some stuff with the JSA and the Injustice Society, stuff related to that. And we learned that Barbara was actually sorting out the sale of her mother's house, who had passed away a few years previously. Now they get to share a banana split, and that's just pretty much them getting to know each other, and that's the start of their journey 2 years ago. But obviously we get a big, we get a big comparison scene when we cut back to the basement with Barbara finding Pat and Courtney with the staff, continuing on from, towards the end of last episode. Now there is like an explanation time. That's probably the best way to put it, explaining what's happened. We sort of skip over that because we don't need to watch that. But of course, it doesn't go well. It's not really helped, especially with Courtney going along with the whole, Starman is my dad, and babbling on about that. It doesn't really help the situation, Courtney. But you see, like, Barbara have a full-on mum moment. Like, I think everyone's had their mum just yell at them like that. And that actually felt real. It was like, wow, that's like I'm looking at my mum and she's yelling at me for not washing the dishes, or not defrosting the chicken, something like that. That's your mum yelling at you. Felt real, but all the lies obviously are not sitting well with Barbara. And she's definitely conflicted about her current situation. Now, obviously, the episode's called Brainwave Jr., so there's a lot of Henry Jr. in this episode. But we have Henry Jr. Visiting his father. Now, we find out that his father has memory loss for the last 10 years, roughly, and his last real memories were around Henry Jr.'s 6th birthday. That's pretty much where he last remembers certain things. Like, the big thing is that he doesn't even remember the death of his wife, so we sort of see him relive that, and we'll relive the first, receival of that information, which was pretty crazy. Now, in regards to his wife and Henry Jr.'s mother, we learned that she apparently drowned, with Henry Sr. also then learning that his son has his abilities, or like a version of his abilities. So that's very interesting to him. Now, because of what's happening, we actually do have Henry Jr. watching another tape of his father's, or from his father. And this was like a final tape recorded just after the death of Mary, his wife. And it's not Mary as in like Mary had a little lamb. It's Mary as in Merry Christmas. Now, we learn here that Mary was Starman's sister, which is like in the comics. Her name's Mary Pemberton. That's her maiden name. And even the whole thing they say here, like Mary, the girl of 1,000 gimmicks, that's her like alias, if you want to call it, from the comics. So they're very comic accurate in regards to that. Now, this tape leads us, and also Henry Jr., to believe that Jordan McKent, or Icicle, is responsible for the death of Mary. I think I was going along with that. I think you were going along with that most likely. So I was like, okay, sweet, we're going along with that. But speaking of Jordan McKent, we do have him meeting Henry King Sr. in his hospital room, and it's like moving him out to, head on to do the ISA stuff at the headquarters to move ahead with their grand plan. However, that move is slightly disrupted by the cosmic staff with a mind of its own. It makes its own way to the hospital to be a hero and sort of take on Icicle, but it is stopped with a whole Brainwave Icicle combo attack, which I thought was fairly cool. But of course, Henry Jr. is like a witness to this, so he knows his father is back working with the ISA. I guess even though he wouldn't be crystal clear on the plan they're about to initiate, Henry Sr. is not fully aware at that point, I don't think. But then again, at the end of the episode, maybe he was aware of it at this point. I don't know. Now, one of the bigger things that pushes some stuff in the episode is that Barbara decides that they are going to be leaving Blue Valley, which drives Pat to, protect Barbara due to where she works and sort of being in the middle of everything. And especially after Corny runs into Henry Jr. and learns more about what is going on, along with thinking that Henry is her cousin, that drives Corny to finish the mission against the ISA, and also in turn sort of saving Pat and Barbara's relationship and sort of keeping her in Blue Valley with her newly found friends. Now, something that sets up next episode most likely is Barbara sending an email to Courtney's father, Sam Curtis, specifically about Courtney, and also she's doing her own research on Starman and just the JSA in general, but obviously mainly Starman. And it is interesting to have the photos, but it's sort of shadowed off, if you want to call it. So she'd be like, hey, he sort of does look like my ex-husband, but I'm not 100% sure. Now, Jordan and his parents come in, and I was like, okay, where's this guy? I thought there was going to be a tense moment, but it's like a normal thing, I guess, and they speak in Norwegian, but Barbara records their conversation, and then later on translates it, might I say, and it's them talking about this machine which turns Barbara onto Pat's side. So I'm sure we'll see more of that play next episode. And I am wondering when we're going to get a confrontation between, I guess specifically Barbara and Jordan. I'm wondering when he's going to catch on that she knows what he's up to and that she knows about the ISA and stuff. I'm intrigued to see when that full on just plays out. Now, we do see that Sam Curtis does reply. We don't see the message, but I think we might be getting some follow-on with that next episode and maybe even a surprise visit. I'm just intrigued to see how they do that, because it sounds like it's pretty much going to be like what they did in the comics with the character. Now, there is some cafeteria drama. That's probably the best way to word it. The JSA, or the new JSA, is not happy about Henry Jr. being brought in, but Courtney knows it's pretty much or sort of needed. She believes it's needed. Whether it actually is needed or not, who knows, but she believes it's needed. And Courtney's sort of willing to maybe not ruin the relationship she's made, but definitely harm them or temporarily ruin them. Temporarily ruin them is the best way to put it. With the other members, just to bring Henry in because they're completely opposed against it, or at least Rick and Yolanda are. Now, JSA and Henry Jr. go into the ISA tunnel. I like how they entered through Cindy's former house, so they go down the same stairs. They just didn't appear there. They make it clear they went through Cindy's house, but they do decide to split up. But we do have Rick and Beth going together, and they go to Solomon Grundy's door, so it's pretty much just Rick versing the door for that sort of portion. Rick promising to come back. I do wonder if the damage Rick does to that door, he bends it a good amount. It seems it's sort of coming off its hinges. I do wonder if the damage he did to that door will come back into play. I would like to think so. So we might get in this, a Grundy escape at some point towards the end of this season. But Courtney, Yolanda, and Henry, this is the main thing, end up, in Dragon King's lab with Brainwave there being used. And they actually get exposed by Cindy, who's still in her jail cell or holding cell, whatever you want to call it, which I thought was funny. Now, we do have the trio versing Dragon King's drones, and I thought it was pretty cool. It was pretty much like COD Zombies, because those drones are pretty much useless. They're just slowly coming towards them. But it was pretty damn cool seeing Henry uses his powers and everything like that. But one thing I was sort of really happy to see was Yolanda sort of just unleashing as Wildcat, because she can be pretty frightening. She could easily be a villain with those powers and everything like that, and a very threatening villain, and she just unleashes on those drones. I thought it was fairly cool. But of course, we had the big Dragon King versus Stargirl fight. Well, I wouldn't say big, but we had the Dragon King versus Stargirl fight. It was just cool seeing Dragon King fight in that way. But of course, his mask, or his hood, whatever you want to call it, gets ripped off after Courtney regains her cosmic staff. And hello, we're introduced to the reptilian face of Dragon King, which might have scared a couple of you. I was like, oh, even though I saw it in one of the trailers, and some of you might have already seen it in one of the trailers from before the show started, I was still like, oh, that's a bit scary and a bit disgusting. And this is pretty much ripped from the comics. I think in the comics it was Shining Knight that did that. I think it was Shining Knight, but yeah, so Corny did it in the show. But the brainwave retrieval in this episode turns out to not really work, as Henry Sr. has gone back to how we pretty much knew him, which is pretty heavy on Henry Jr. It's sort of heartbreaking for him. But we do have the escape scene where they're trying to escape the tunnels, and Henry Jr. actually saves Corny when they're actually confronted by Brainwave, and we end up having like a Brainwave versus Brainwave Jr. sort of mind telekinetic telepathy battle thing. Pretty interesting. But we also find out, and this is like sort of like the big mic drop moments, we find out that Icicle did not kill Henry Jr.'s mother. I think we all thought, okay, that sounds like Icicle. We've seen him going around killing. It's not a surprise. But it was actually Henry Sr. that killed Mary. Henry Jr.'s father killed his own mother. Very emotional. That whole scene, we even had like Henry apologizing to Yolanda, even apologizing to Corny as well, saying like, yeah, you can see the good in people and everything like that. And all of a sudden, Henry Jr. is buried and we're led to believe he's dead. Like, I honestly teared up at that moment. Especially when they play that goddamn Dancing on My Own song. That just added to the emotional moments of that episode, or that part. I mean, who would have thought, looking back at episode 1 of the season and even into those episodes that kept going forward, who would have thought early on this season that you would tear up over Henry King Jr. by episode 10? Who would have thought? I reckon that was probably going like 101 to 1 on the betting stakes. Crazy. I couldn't believe that was arguably one of the most emotional moments of the season so far, if not the most emotional. I can't believe that made me tear up. Insane. But wow, we thought that Icicle was bad. Brainwave has killed his own wife, and we're led to believe that he's killed his own son, by the looks of it at least. Now, this brings up the big question that you might be able to give your opinions on in the comments. Is Henry actually dead? Or Henry Jr., is he actually dead? If he isn't, I think he would have to appear by the end of this season if he's alive. He would have to do that. They couldn't leave it as a season 2 reveal, as that would be spoiled before the season even aired next year. There'd be some way where that would come out, that he's back on the show, and it wouldn't be like for a flashback. So if they're going to keep him alive on the show, I think they'd have to reveal that this season, in my opinion at least. They could leave it till season 2 and they could somehow keep it under wraps that he's not there filming. I just don't see that being likely, but they could keep it hidden. Now, it could be a finale reveal, and maybe he turns up and helps save the day or something like that. Maybe it's an end credit scene for season 1 that shows that he's alive. Maybe Dragon King had him. That's the big thing. Maybe he is alive, but he's going to become bad, because they could go 2 routes where he comes back and he's alive and he joins the JSA. Because Brainwave Jr. is mostly known as a good guy, but he has been on the bad side of as well, like the villainy. So he can go either way, but he's mostly known as a good guy. So they can go either way if they want to. So it will be interesting to see what they do there if they keep him alive. And I have a feeling they would. I have a feeling they will, even though that would be a good ending to a character. He sacrificed himself to save the team, and it was emotional. So I don't know if that was the end of Brainwave Jr. or Henry King Jr., I think I would be okay with it because it was so emotional. However, I just think they'll bring him back, and I'd like to see him back as well, because we just got him using his powers, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But just an insane ending to this episode. Yeah, just unbelievable, to be completely honest. But yeah, guys, this episode in general, as I said, I think it's my favorite of the series so far, episode 10. The cast and even some of the crew were hyping up the episode before it even aired, and I completely understand why. I just thought they did a lot of stuff in regards to not only setting up some stuff going forward into these last handful of episodes, but just staying in the moment and doing a lot with Henry and his father and everything. I thought they nailed it. I don't know who wrote the episode, but I think it might have been, I'm not too sure. Actually, I'm not too sure who wrote the episode, but they nailed it. I think it was such a good episode, and MVP of the episode would have to be Henry King Jr. easily. Jake Austin Walker, I think, is the guy that plays him. Yeah, MVP easily, nailed it. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know your various opinions in the comments section down below. What did you think of this episode? What was your favorite part? Did you tear up when Henry died? Were you like, why am I tearing up over this dude? I hated him in episode 1. Let me know all your various opinions down there in the comments. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.